Imagine this. It's 7 a.m. The alarm just buzzed. Your eyelids heavy. The world outside still half asleep. Without even thinking, your hand shoots out not to turn off the alarm, but to grab your phone. Before you're even fully awake, your thumb is already scrolling. Notification. Real news. Headline. Ad. Another reel. 5 minutes. 10. 30. By the time you lift your eyes, the sun is higher in the sky, but you're not. You're still stuck in the glowing little rectangle that rules your mornings. Here's the strange thing. You weren't looking for joy. There wasn't an emergency, no celebration, no vital news, just the silent pull of habit. And yet, after all that stimulation, the tiny ache in your chest, the restlessness, the subtle hunger remains untouched. This is not an accident. It's a mirror of our times. We live in an era overflowing with pleasures. Chocolate on every shelf, music on demand, streaming series that never end, food, entertainment, lust, laughter, all available in infinite supply. But if pleasure was the answer, why do we still feel so starved? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Much of what we call pleasure isn't actually pleasure. It's anesthesia. It's not joy, it's escape. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Look around today, and you'll see how prophetic that was. We've built an entire world of avoidances. The scroll, the snack, the binge, the flirt, the laugh, the purchase. All masks we wear to silence what we don't want to feel. But the soul cannot be silenced forever. The nature of craving. Let's rewind thousands of years. Socrates, standing in the agora, would argue with his fellow Athenians about the good life. He believed the unexamined life wasn't worth living. But what dominates our lives today isn't examination, it's craving. Craving is older than civilization itself. Take chocolate, for example. Modern neuroscience shows us that the brain responds to sugar by releasing dopamine. Not because sugar makes us happy, but because it makes us anticipate more sugar. Dopamine is not the high. Dopamine is the itch. Think about that. The chemical that keeps you hooked on, scrolling, eating, shopping, or chasing was never designed to give you satisfaction. It was designed to keep you moving, to ensure survival, to keep you hunting, foraging, mating, reproducing. In short, never satisfied, always seeking. Nietzsche saw this clearly when he wrote, "Man does not strive for happiness. Only the Englishman does." His point wasn't an insult. It was a warning. If you chase happiness as a permanent state, you'll never reach it. Because the machinery of craving isn't built for happiness, it's built for the chase. And yet, here we are. Billions of humans, every day, chasing the childhood equation. Think back to when you were a child. You fell down, scraped your knee, started to cry. What did someone say? Don't cry here. Have a cookie. Or, stop crying. Look your cartoons on. In that moment, without realizing it, you learned an equation. Pain equals bad. Feeling equals weakness. Pleasure equals solution. That tiny rewiring of your nervous system shaped your entire adult life. Because every time you face discomfort now, you instinctively look for the quick fix. Lonely, scroll. Anxious, snack. Empty, shop. Bored, stream. Rejected, swipe. And each time you do, you bury the real problem a little deeper. Jung called this buried place the shadow. The shadow isn't evil. It's simply the parts of ourselves we don't want to face. But here's the paradox. Every time we bury discomfort with shallow pleasure, the shadow grows louder. It leaks out as guilt, compulsion, anxiety, and the endless sense that no matter how much you consume, it's never enough. The mask of anesthesia. Let me tell you a story. There was once a woman named Anna. Every night, after work, exhausted, she would collapse on the couch and binge-watch shows until midnight. The laughter, the tears, the drama, it gave her the illusion of life. But when the credits rolled, she wasn't refreshed. She was emptier than before. Why? Because what Anna really needed wasn't entertainment. It was rest, silence, reflection. The show wasn't feeding her, was numbing her. Psychologists call this misattribution of craving. We think we want the cookie, the reel, the flirt, the purchase. But what we really crave is comfort, meaning, belonging. The substitution is so subtle, we rarely catch it. And so, the cycle spins. Here's the painful truth. Most pleasure is not about enjoyment. It's about avoiding, but every time you avoid awareness, you pay a steep price. Because every hit of false pleasure creates a deeper hunger for the real thing. And when you don't get it, you don't feel satisfied. You feel broken. But you're not broken. You're just unaware. Unaware that you've been conditioned to mistake escape for enjoyment. Unaware that pleasure is often a symptom, not a solution. So let me ask you, when was the last time you felt full, not just distracted, not just amused, but truly whole? When was the last time you sat in silence without reaching for something? If you can't remember, you're not alone. But you can begin here. Because this video is not about rejecting pleasure. It's about reclaiming it. Now, let's step deeper into the labyrinth. Imagine a desert traveler, thirsty, sunburnt, desperate. In the distance, they see a shimmering pool of water. They run toward it only to find it vanishes. A mirage. They see another, run again, gone, over and over. That's the story of modern pleasure. Endless mirages. The next drink, the next like, the next purchase, the next fling. Each one promising fulfillment. Each one vanishing the moment we touch it. Why do we keep running? Because the chase is intoxicating. Neuroscience of illusion. Modern brain imaging shows us that pleasure circuits light up more in anticipation than in satisfaction. In other words, your brain enjoys wanting more than having. This is why the idea of dessert is more exciting than the last bite. Why the notification ping feels addictive, even when the message itself is meaningless. This is why slot machines in casinos are so effective. The random interval of reward keeps dopamine firing. Not when you win, but when you almost win. It's the anticipation that hooks you. Now think about social media. Infinite scroll, random likes, viral reels. Each swipe is a slot machine. Each ping, a maybe. Each video, a bait for the next. No wonder time vanishes. No wonder we feel emptier after, because the machine was never designed to feed us. It was designed to hook us, and we mistook the hook for food. Philosophy meets pleasure. Let's bring in the philosophers. Socrates believed that true happiness came not from chasing pleasures, but from aligning the soul with virtue. To him, pleasure was suspicious. It could seduce the soul into slavery. Kant, centuries later, built his moral philosophy around the idea of treating humans as ends, not means. Applied to pleasure, this means never let pleasure use you. Never reduce yourself to a means for fleeting stimulation. And then there's Nietzsche, who saw pleasure as both dangerous and necessary. He warned against the last man, the comfortable consumer, endlessly chasing comfort, avoiding risk, numbing himself with small pleasures. Nietzsche's nightmare was a humanity that forgot how to strive for greatness because it drowned in comfort. Sound familiar? Childhood echoes. Think again about the child silenced with cookies and cartoons. What happens when that child grows up? Every time they feel sadness, they don't express it, they smother it. Every time they feel anger, they don't explore it, they distract themselves. Every time they feel emptiness, they don't sit with it, they consume. And so adulthood becomes louder and louder. Pleasures shouting over wounds. But here's the secret. Wounds don't vanish when ignored. They wait. They whisper, they ache, until one day you realize your entire life has been one long attempt not to feel. The relationship trap. Let's take love as an example. There was once a man who described himself as hopelessly romantic. He jumped from relationship to relationship, each time consumed by passion, intensity, obsession, heartbreak. Then repeat. When asked why, he said, "I just love love." But the truth, he didn't love love. He loved distraction, because, when he was alone, silence got too loud. This is what happens when we confuse longing with love, scrolls with joy, numbing with healing. It's not that pleasure is evil, it's that we've turned it into plaster for wounds we refuse to treat. Consumerism as distraction. Look at modern consumerism. Every ad whispers, "You are not enough unless you buy this." Clothes, cars, gadgets, vacations. Each purchase a tiny rush. Each one fading fast, and then the guilt. Why guilt? Because deep down, we know the object was never the answer. It wasn't the shoes. It wasn't the phone. It wasn't the car. It was the hunger to feel whole, and no purchase can fill that hunger. Science of silence. Neuroscientists studying mindfulness have found that when people practice sitting in silence, brain scans show reduced activity in the default mode network, the part of the brain linked to rumination, craving, and self-referential thought. In other words, silence literally calms the craving brain. But for those wired to fear stillness, silence feels unbearable. That's why people need music in the shower, TV while eating, podcasts while walking. Stillness feels like punishment. But in truth, stillness is medicine. The mirror of shadow. Jung's concept of shadow work isn't about embracing darkness for the sake of it. It's about noticing the places where we betray ourselves for relief. Every time you eat when you're not hungry, scroll when you're not curious, flirt when you're not in love, you're not choosing joy. You're choosing anesthesia. And the first step is to say, I see you. This act of acknowledgement begins integration. And integration is the path to freedom. So where do we go from here? We can't destroy pleasure. We shouldn't. Pleasure is sacred when chosen with intention. The problem isn't pleasure, it's avoidance. The way out isn't rejection, it's reclamation. Step 1. Ask the question. Next time you reach for your phone, your fridge, your wallet, pause. Ask, what am I avoiding? Loneliness, fear, boredom, exhaustion. Name it. Say it out loud if you must. Naming removes its power. Step 2. Sit with the ache. Instead of rushing to silence discomfort, let yourself feel it. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's awkward. But each time you endure, you prove to your nervous system that stillness isn't fatal. This is how you rewire your brain to trust silence again. Step 3. Practice delay. Discipline isn't punishment. It's every time you delay a craving, whether it's checking a notification or eating dessert, you strengthen the muscle of self. And trust is the real high. Because when you trust yourself, you're no longer enslaved by craving. Step 4. Seek real pleasure. The pleasures worth craving aren't loud. They're deep. A conversation where you lose track of time. Finishing a task you feared. Walking outside without headphones. Hearing the world breathe. Realizing you no longer need what once controlled you. This is pleasure as expansion, not escape. Step 5. Integrate the shadow. Instead of burying discomfort, invite it in. Journal it. Speak it. Let it teach you. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not by denial, not by distraction, but by integration. The final vision. Now imagine this. You walk into a quiet room. No noise, no phone, just you. And instead of panic, you feel home. Not because you have everything, but because you are everything. This is the ultimate pleasure. Not the loud, fleeting high of distraction, but the silent, steady fullness of being whole. Key takeaways. Most pleasure isn't joy, it's anesthesia. Dopamine fuels anticipation, not satisfaction. Childhood teaches us to replace feeling with distraction. Philosophers warned us unexamined pleasure enslaves the soul. Jung showed us avoidance feeds the shadow. Integration frees it. True pleasure is quiet, expansive, and intentional. Discipline is trust is the real high. Closing call to action. So let me leave you with this. Every time you reach for shallow pleasure, ask, what am I avoiding? Every time you choose silence over distraction, you reclaim a piece of your soul. If this message struck something deep, subscribe, not for me, but for you, because you're not alone in this journey. Comment below. What craving do you now see differently? Remember, pleasure is not the enemy. Avoidance is, and the most beautiful pleasure you can ever experience is being at home with yourself.